about sports! All right. Good evening.
Good evening.
We're in our winter gear.
I see.
You know, with
The hat. Have to explain the hat.
it's the Greensburg Green Sox. The minor league team of my father's youth.
Okay.
Affiliate of the St. Louis Cardinals. He used to go down to historic Offutt Field, because I'm told I can't say the name Offutt Field without legally saying historic in front of it.
Like the university.
Like the university, exactly.
The university of, yes.
But that was my father's favorite thing. He would tell me stories of the Gas House Gang coming to historic Offutt Field and playing against Greensburg's minor league team. And the great men at Ebbets Field made, to my stunning surprise, had a Greensburg hat and jersey, which my son very nicely bought me for Father's Day. So they are my most treasured hat and my most treasured jersey from the hometown.
Very nice.
I didn't know Pepper Martin and those guys played at Greensburg. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Came down a couple times. We got to see him down there. And, you know, of course, back then, no TV, not much in the way of transportation from Greensburg to Pittsburgh. So that was the only way they could see those guys.
Yeah, yeah.
Pirates played in Jeanette, and basically Western Pennsylvania had a minor league circuit, which will be a good lead into our second topic of the first show. You know, it was a nice league, nice historic. I enjoy going back and reading some of the old newspaper clips about those games.
Yep.
You know, I don't enjoy reading newspaper clips about Lori Loughlin. You know who Lori Loughlin is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
I do.
I was getting on the night and MSN, which is on my Internet Explorer. I don't know why, but it comes up, and it showed you know, this girl who, of course, I had a crush on at Fuller House, is Jesse's wife.
Yep.
She doesn't look so good.
Not right now.
No, she's afraid of having to go to jail.
Yeah.
For spending $500. I didn't realize how much she spent to get her daughter into USC, a school that maybe would have cost what, $160,000 or $70,000 to get a degree.
Right.
So she spent $500,000 to get her in there.
And there's no other schools in California that you could have gotten into that are okay either. So
Apparently, she wanted her daughter to be a rower, which I guess would be the sports link to the story. Her daughter never rowed before.
Right.
That would be me trying to be a swimmer after never swimming before.
Didn't Yale offered scholarships to 3 girls that never played, was it field hockey or lacrosse ever in their lives?
Well, that's one thing I have in common with them. I've never played field hockey either. So
Well, I'm just pissed at my family that they didn't think it was worth $500,000 to get me into a good school.
I'm with you. That's the same with mine too.
Your mother tried to pay $1,000 to get you in Beaver County Community College.
Yeah. Yes.
So you could be a part of the cricket team.
Yes.
Cricket team.
Well,
it's crazy stuff, isn't it? Crazy what people do.
It's featured on ESPN Plus tonight. Cricket, England and another country.
That's some crazy stuff when you watch that for a couple minutes. It's a crazy, crazy stuff, man.
I've opted for the Canton Charge and Erie Bayhawks of the NBA G League, or as Gary likes to call it, the G-Spot League.
I don't know. I guess.
I have trouble figuring out who to root for. Erie being, you know, closer, or the Canton Charge, who is the farm team of my beloved Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I may root for who wins.
Didn't Isaiah Thomas want to have like 500 teams, didn't he? I mean, he's obviously a very fiscally smart executive.
He owned the great
He had like 360 teams, didn't he?
He owned the CBA and he destroyed them, which is why the NBA G League has come into existence. So it was because of Isaiah Thomas. That's a good link.
Yep.
who was a general manager of the Knicks. General manager. No, that's a bad link, bad segue.
That explains some things, though.
I'm fortunate here. Fletch doesn't look happy.
Well, I'm just watching the Dallas Golden State game and thinking, my God, that Golden State team is horrendous right now.
It's amazing how quickly it changed. Jesus, God. Yeah, it is.
You got to look at it this way. They have just opened their window for championships.
I know.
Yeah. Next year, they get everybody back, plus a very high first-round pick, if not the first-round pick in the draft.
It feels like Houston baseball a little bit. Yep. Yep. Feels like Houston. We don't know about scouting, putting a camera in other teams' locker rooms, but it's kind of – it feels like Houston baseball. Make ourselves so horrible we can't possibly not be returning in a 5-year period.
No, they made it there.
That's the game we're in now with these many franchises, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. But our franchise, I think, did a very positive thing this week for the first time. For the first time in a while, I'm kind of fired up about what the Pirates are doing, the direction, the hope that they're sick of being embarrassed. We hired the dear Cherington, and I love that last name, so that's all I'm going to call him. I'm not going to use his first name here. I like Cherington. That's a good name.
Sounds like he should be your butler, Dave.
It does sound like that.
Cherington.
Something on public television.
Mr. Cherington.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to call him Mr. in that situation.
Oh, like
and
Mr.
My wife, who we referred to in the show, asked me, she goes, how old is this guy, 25? Because he was young looking for his age.
45. He's 40.
I know.
They say the same about me, Gary, but you know.
I know they do. Well, that's correct. That's correct. Cherington. He does sound like Master.
It's a good name. He doesn't deserve a first name. And they could have gone out. They could have hired, the assistant butler for the farm system of the Cleveland Cavaliers to come be the general manager. It could have gone cheap. But they went out. They spent some money. They got a guy who has a track record. He built a powerhouse minor league system in Boston. The greatest thing I think he did, that kind of, I remember just laughing when the Josh Beckett, the Carl Crawford, the Adrian Gonzalez all had the poor attitudes in Boston.
Yep.
$162 million of salary.
Yep. Cut quickly. It's what we talked about, in my view, about the Steelers. Cut quickly at some point. Yep.
Exactly. And in an offseason, he signed 7 free agents, none of which you would have opened your eyes at. David Ross, who new manager of the Cubbies. Johnny Gomes, Stephen Drew, Mike Napoli, who just had a resurgent career after this. Shane Victorino. Koji, we're going to call him Koji. I'm not going last name there. He deserves just to have a first name. And Ryan Dempster. He got Joel Hanrahan, which was very beneficial to the Pirates run with Mark Melanson. But here's a guy that in 1 year improved 28 games by astutely signing some
character guys.
Nice character guys. Showed you could win character guys.
Yeah.
World Series. He eventually couldn't maintain it. But here's a group of guys. He rebuilt what was a bad system. Theo Epstein is a brilliant Hall of Fame talent for a general manager, but he's also, in building those teams, he destroys farm systems. So the Red Sox really didn't have much. This guy, in a short period of time, built a system. Xander Bogaerts, Mookie Betts, who I remember people were trying to push and trade for Mookie Betts left and right. He smartly hung on to him, became one of, if not the best player in the game. Brock Holt, who was a great hitter with Altoona for the Pirates, part of the Hanrahan trade, who ended up helping them win a couple titles there by just being a solid second baseman.
And he also
multi-position too. Multi-position guy. Need guys like that. These big bullpens. Yep.
And he raised a lot of money for the Jimmy Foundation while he was there too.
Mhm.
Community guy.
Good guy. I mean, he was as responsible for their 2018 championship as anybody.
Yep.
He plays 6 positions. So
Well, I find it. I don't find it quizzical because I know why they're doing it. But ever since he's come here, nobody has given these guys who have gone out, and I think nothing has made 2 great moves so far. He got a guy from a winning organization to run his organization, who turned around and hired a guy who's won a World Series as a general manager. I think those are 2 power moves. I think, to me, it looks like here's a guy, maybe his dad kicked his ass, but a guy who's embarrassed, hopefully embarrassed at what this team has become. People have made fun of Cherington for saying, he's looked at the resources that they've put into the minor league system is what they were talking about, not free agents. And from everything I've read in the past, they have always spent a lot of money on the minor league system. It was just the people running the minor league system, in my estimation, that wasn't doing a good job. So I don't find it stunning that this is what Cherington found when he was looking through the finances. I think what he found was, okay, they've invested in here, they've screwed it up. I'm going to go in and I'm going to fix it. You can do it the long way through the draft, or you can trade what you got, which is worth. You have 3 players that can get you top notch. It doesn't pay to trade anybody else because you're not going to get top prospects for it. So why do it? But you have 3 guys who can come in: Marte, Josh Bell, and
Kayla.
And if I'm Cherington, I definitely trade Marte. He's gone in another year. They have 2 years with him, but here's a guy who has speed, can play defense, and is a solid hitter with some power. So I think he might not be able to drag you a 1 or 2 prospect with a good organization, but if you get a couple top 10 talents from a good organization, a deep organization, I think he's worth the trade. I think you can also get people who are desperate for a closer. Kayla is a jack-off from all intents and purposes, but he's a jack-off who can close games and
huge arm, yeah.
So I would go there. Bell, you got to hang on to somebody to sell tickets. Plus, out of the 3, I would think you'd command the least. There are not a lot of calls for first baseman who can't really play first base, and I don't know that you're going to get a lot for him. So why not keep him? Why not use him as the face of your franchise, so to speak, as you rebuild? But it's not going to be a quick build. But here's a guy I have confidence in, who can do the job. Mr. 21.
Well, Dave, I'm with you. I think I like the hire for a couple of reasons. One thing you mentioned that when he went to Boston, that farm system was a disaster, and he built it back up pretty quickly. Put a lot of systems in place, which I think will only benefit the Pirates because, as we talked about before, the player development side is really where they're having some issues there. So if he can get that taken care of, that would be great. I mean, this is a guy who is very responsible for their 2013 championship. He held on to some of his core talent when people were trying to pry it away from him. Probably came at a cost. It cost him his job, really. I mean, the Red Sox brought in Dombrowski. Originally the thought was it was going to be a 2-headed monster. The 2 of them were going to run the organization together, but Dombrowski didn't go for that, and it wasn't handled particularly well. And Cherington was moved out. But that 2018 team, there's a lot of his fingerprints on that as well. So I mean, I think he's done some good things. One of the things that I've really liked just reading a little bit about him is this guy is a voracious reader. And one of the things he really reads about and one of the things that he believes in is culture change. He reads a lot of those management books, and, he's coming to a team that was having, locker room brawls, that there was a lot of issues throughout the organization. And one of the things you mentioned, Mookie Betts, one of the problems they were having with the Red Sox is that the a lot of the veterans weren't embracing the young talent when it would come in, and he put a stop to that.
Yeah.
So it's really going to be about, as much anything, it's going to be about teaching and readjusting a culture. Don't be expecting the team to win right away. I'm with you, Dave. If you're not going to compete, why do you need a top level closer? Just move him while he's still under your control and you can get something back for him. I would imagine they're going to move him before spring training. I would not doubt that at all. Marte, I would also move. Reynolds has played enough center field in the minor leagues that he can handle that position. You're going to give up a little bit, sure. But, if you're going to get a few prospects in return and develop them, it's well worth doing. I like that. Now, here's the thing that's funny, that all of a sudden people are talking about, well, because Cherington's been hired, he's going to automatically hire John Farrell as the manager. And I don't see that happening. I mean, I think John Farrell would not be a good fit. I think he's a good fit if you have a team full of veterans.
Veteran team, yeah.
You need someone who is going to be a teacher, someone who's going to be patient, someone who's probably – I would think you want a minor league guy to come in and work with this young club, because winning and losing is not going to be important right away. They need to develop these guys. You need to have someone who's going to be patient and be able to get this team to play baseball the right way.
Right. And it's not like there's not talent there. I mean, they have a decent core of young players. It's just the thing.
Well, think of someone like Keller, how he would benefit from someone who is a steady hand who could help him develop, like much of what had happened in Boston.
Yeah, absolutely. Or Tyler Glass. No, not him. Anyways,
that hurts.
But I mean, he made his first moves today. He brought 5 guys up to the 40-man. Blake Cederlin, who was a little bit of a surprise, although I kind of like how he was developing last year through Altoona, and he could be certainly a future guy. He has good secondary numbers that could hopefully by middle of next year get him in a bullpen, which they sorely need. And one of the things I see, maybe he's down the road closer that they're looking for. They brought Will Craig in, who used to be a heck of a first baseman. Love how he worked at that, and now he won a Gold Glove. And that says a lot.
Insane, isn't it?
Jeez.
I'm sorry?
That's insane. I never thought I'd see that.
Oh, no. Going to that, from that extreme, one extreme to the other.
He was brilliant with that. They also got Cabrian Hayes, who they brought in, who is probably the best defensive infielder we've had since Jose Lean. He shows a little power, still hasn't shown consistency offensively, so that's a little concern right now. But if he can bring that together, I mean, that's a hell of a get. Unfortunately, Montana Durapo has been dropped from the 40-man.
Name, yeah. Soap opera name. Yeah, soap opera name.
No, so I don't want you to get
From what I saw, that's not a big loss, yeah.
No, it's Neverauskas somehow seemed to stay on the 40-man roster.
he's Lithuanian. It's Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Or he had some pictures of someone. Although I guess I shouldn't say that, given what's going on with their former closer. Drop that one back here.
Yeah.
He's a big dude.
I bet it in my comments. 21 new charges against Honor Roberto Clemente. 21 new charges against him because he still sits and hopefully rots in a Westmoreland County cell.
Jesus Christ.
But anyways, I like what he's doing. I'm really a fan of what he did at Boston, and I think it's okay to relieve yourself of some bitterness and actually give these guys a little credit for what they've done over the past.
Well, I mean, keep in mind, Dave, when he joined the Red Sox in the first place, he was there specifically to rebuild that farm team before he even became general manager.
Yeah.
He was an assistant general manager, and that was his charge, and he did it. And what have we said the greatest need for the Pirates are? Because they're sure as hell not going to be able to sign free agents that are going to make a difference. They need to develop their own talent.
And don't forget what he did in Toronto. I mean, that's a monster system, right?
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. It's Canadian, okay?
Hey,
But even though it's Canadian, it still counts as a farm system. Maybe you get 10 cents on the dollar for it, but it's a farm system nonetheless. And it's a monster. And actually, Toronto is one team in the next 2 years I think is going to take a drastic turn back up because of it.
who knows? This guy could be the Buck Showalter of general managers, if you think about it. You stay there for a little while, you develop it, you wear out your welcome, and then you go, you know?
That's okay. That's okay. So Sid Thrift did that, and we got 3 points out of it.
Yeah.
So hopefully on April 1st, he'll pull a Tony Pena.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
That would be sweet.
A couple things, though, not to be a downer here, but, Henry's worth $2.5 billion, I recall. Mudding's about $1.1 billion. So that's a huge difference. That's a huge difference. Now, they're not the sole owner of these franchises, but that's a huge difference. So, he's going to be dealing with somebody that, although clearly reading about the Pirates and trying to get prepared for this, I mean, I could see some of the anti-nutting commentary. When they're making more operating revenue than, they're valued at 20th, but their operating revenue is higher than
the Yankees.
Yeah, about 25 teams, right. So that's a little, Nutting's going to have to behave a little differently. I think he's going to have to listen to this guy, number one, and number two, have to kind of change his mentality a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
I think the things I liked are what Fletch said. I've worked for 2 very successful companies, and the reason they were successful was because of the culture. It wasn't because you had to drink Kool-Aid, but they had a certain way of doing things. They had a certain way of operating, and they held you to that standard. And this is where I think the Steelers have fallen down a little bit. It may just be the overall NFL, perhaps, but I like somebody talking about that, and he's done that. And I think he summoned up the situations that we've all talked about on this show. I mean, the Oakland, the Tampa, the Atlanta situations. He brought that up. That's what I feel. Like there's something to be noticed there. Study that. I'm not talking about this nonsense with the 3 outcomes, but what are they doing? How are they doing this? Where are they spending the money? How are they developing this kind of stuff? I mean, that's where the Pirates are going to have to trade in, and I like what this guy's talked about. So, and hopefully Nutting buys off on it. When you've how many businesses can you multiply the initial investment in 1996 14 times to where it's made at now? I mean, I think it's time to kind of change your mentality a little bit about the control of the operating costs too. I mean,
if you're Nutting, why would you hire this guy if that wasn't your intention?
The only thing I will say is there's an ego that goes with some of this. I'm hoping that this, I don't know, I don't live there like you guys do. I wish someday I may again. I'd like to be a little bit closer to it, but sometimes the ego of the stuff is you hire, and I've seen it. That's the situations in my own life, I've been involved on the corporate side. The ego gets involved and you don't let people do what they can do. You got to be the final say on everything. You got to control the purse strings, whatever. You just have a way of operating.
Well, I've always been under the impression that he might have given the budget. I don't think Nutting's ever put much of his 2 cents into the running of the team.
I don't think so either.
And I'm okay with that, but when you hire the right people, and this guy's got the track record to turn this situation. So you need to let him do it. You change some of your philosophy, and honestly, I think with that kind of operating revenue and with that kind of value, even if there's other partners that he's arranged here that we don't know about, it's time to open up a little bit. And I wouldn't open it up for paying Bryce Harper $33 million. I don't believe that that's the way to go. I don't care if you're close to winning or not. I'm not sure anybody's worth that kind of money, and there's been plenty of examples of that. And I think this guy's talking about doing things the other way. Completely agree with Chris about the fact he built that system. Well, both of you actually. The players that they developed in that system, beyond just Betts even, Bogarts, you could go on and on and on here. And they weren't the greatest on the pitching development side. That's a problem with the Pirates. I mean, I'm hoping they can fix that a little bit too, because there's been plenty of examples of these guys. On the field, the fallback of some of those younger pitchers last year was very concerning to me because it was all of them.
Well, the problem is twofold. It's developing pitchers, and it's spending your money wisely in Latin America. They have not, under this regime, gotten any significant players out of Latin America.
No, they went for quantity as opposed to quality. And this right here should be an advantage for you.
Totally. Totally. And the fact that they have had a lot of even African-American players and stuff like that. They need to sell that. You need to sell that to the countries and to other places. I completely agree. Completely.
But the other thing I like, guys, is that he's brought in two guys in his president and his general manager who come from winning organizations and come from winning cultures.
Sure.
So that can do nothing but help.
That's my point.
That's all I'm saying. It's give the guy a little credit, at least up front. If he becomes a jack and doesn't allow them to do their jobs because they have no money, it's one thing. But there's never been anything to suggest he doesn't spend money on the development system. I think that's what the problem was, because from all accounts, when Huntington came in, he made significant investments, especially in Latin America. He's got nothing out of it. That's Huntington.
Well, let's not be so quick to throw Huntington under the bus either. I mean, he did a lot of good things while he was here.
I'm not
Toward the end, there were some, things just really fell apart. The Chris Archer trade pretty much was the nail in the coffin at that, giving up two pretty good prospects for that. But, I mean, he inherited a team that was bereft of talent at all levels, and he brought him back. But, guys, general managers, they have a limited shelf life. Situations change.
Yeah.
They have different strengths, different weaknesses.
Yeah.
He, for what he had to work with, I don't think Huntington was the right guy at this point of the development. I mean, he was able to get them back up, but maintaining is one thing. And, dealing with the whole arbitration system and making sure when you're going to jettison people, that's a tough chore.
Huntington did
a
great job finding value at a free agent level. Great job of that. Where he didn't do a good job was in the system. Primarily with what the Pirates have, the advantage of 21, but also the advantage of facilities that, from what I hear, are state-of-the-art. Had he admitted there was a problem, like he should have, because they weren't getting any production, and just change the people and change the philosophy, Neil Huntington would have a job right now.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah, probably.
The lack of admitting that was a problem. I mean, the Latin American thing is just something that troubles me to no end.
Well, and then they go and they want to fire Omar Marino.
Yeah.
And then they bring him back.
Yeah.
It's just a really bizarre, 24 hours.
Right.
Makes no sense.
No, I mean, that to me was his downfall. Admit you have a problem and fix it.
Can I make one point about culture when you're finished? Because I want to tell you guys something. It's a little bit different sport, but I want to tell you guys.
Okay, Chris?
All right. Let me give you guys an example about the culture thing.
Say baloney first.
Baseball is a little bit different. All right. And hockey's a little more homogenous. But being fortunate enough to be back here in the East, both New Jersey, New York, Philadelphia, see a lot of hockey. The organizations that were winning, Pittsburgh, Chicago, LA, even now like the Islanders, which I saw this past Saturday, they come out for the warm-up, okay? It's very organized. There's not a lot of people goofing off, dancing to music, very focused, routines. You can see it's click, 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 okay? Then you look at other teams that aren't winning consistently. Now, I know hockey's a more homogenous, but still, this is where I think the Pirates need to strive to. It's like anything else. If you're selling hot dogs or you're a retailer or you're a movie company, whatever you are, you have a way of doing things. And that's the case. And people who violate it, you're out. It's like the Patriots in football. We could probably name it. Maybe the Warriors for a while in basketball. If this guy's going to talk about that kind of stuff is what you need to start with. Then the personnel is important too, and the people you hire, but you need to start with that. Because if you don't have that, I see some of these teams, they come in, I'll leave them nameless because I got to think about who they are, but the winning teams, they're not goofing around. They're not dancing to music. They're not talking around. They're just throwing a puck around or goofing off or laughing. They're focused on what they've got to do, and you can clearly see it.
Yeah.
I think baseball is no different, and it starts at that whatever. I know next segment we'll talk about it, but whatever, single A level, this is how we do it. If you're not going to do it, you're going to carp about yourself all the time, talent like mines, goodbye.
Yeah, and you get a culture where you self-police.
Correct.
That shit doesn't happen. It's dealt with by, the team leaders. They do it and they handle it.
Yep.
And that's a winning attitude. And again, that's something that kind of fell by the wayside after 2015. There weren't the team leaders. There weren't the guys to do that in the thing. In the clubhouse. And that's an important point. Winning isn't just about having the most talent.
Definitely not.
No.
Absolutely. But you have to have a mix of attitude and talent.
Well, I mean, Gary, you mentioned the Steelers. The person who played that role in the one Steeler run was Jerome Bettis. He was the one that kept that locker room going, and if there's something that needed to be discussed with Cowher, he was the one who went in and talked to him.
Yeah.
It was, they self-policed.
Yeah. And there aren't those people now, and in my opinion, Ben wasn't one of those people.
He wasn't.
When Ben didn't have those people to rely on, and he was looked at as a leader, and any guy that has stats like he does and still doesn't get the team MVP, that should tell you.
Yeah, I agree.
Volumes about what they think of him. So,
but there were too many things over the past few years with the Pirates that bothered me. All that clubhouse nonsense this year. I thought even like some of the base running and the continued repeated mistakes, like that tells me that like inherently way down in the system, there's not a penalty for how we're going to function. And I think it's no different than running a company or anything else, or your own life for that matter. And I, somebody who's going to talk about that, and I like the examples he summed up, like, you look at Oakland and Tampa, they don't have you don't hear about a lot of off-field problems or look at me. You don't hear that stuff.
Yeah. Well, and that was a function of one of the things that Clint Hurdle seemed to like, but was not very successful. He liked the aggression. But it's one thing to have aggression. It's one thing to have aggression with guys that aren't necessarily fast or smart base runners.
Right.
It gets reckless at that point.
Right.
But everybody would blame the third base coach. Well, they all had the same thing in common, which tells me that's what they're being told to do. They're being told to disrupt and be aggressive, but that only works when you have people who understand when to go and understand when not to go, not just to go. And again, that's an attitude. It's an attitude, the difference between playing smart baseball and trying to make something happen because in my eyes, you didn't feel you had the talent to win.
I mean, the other guy coming from the Pirates organization that's coming back to Pitt, was it Williams? I mean, he saw why a guy like Lafferty gets plugged in and is effective. And I don't see it any different in baseball or football or anything for that matter. And I honestly don't see it if you run a chain of hot dog shops. I mean, this is what we can plug anybody in because you're born and bred in this. You're brought up in this. And I think that is showing a lot now in this high cost, risky operating environment, things changing rapidly. That's showing through in a lot of these different professional games in particular, and probably even in college sports to a degree.
Well, it also shows you don't have to pay the most to win if you have the right mix of people.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And again, like you said, Fletch, and I agree wholeheartedly. Huntington, I consider him to have a successful run as a Pirate general manager. He didn't do much for the farm system, which is very true, which cost him his job in the long run. But he brought talent in that wasn't necessarily talent when he brought it in to get the most out of his younger players that he was bringing up. And it was a successful run. It was a successful run for Clint Hurdle. I mean, you build a team like that, you finish with a 500 record over your tenure.
Yep.
It was successful. I mean, it's easy to criticize these guys when you get to see them 24/7, when you see every game, when you have social media.
Yep.
I mean, Mike Tomlin, my God, who's having the coaching career of coaching year of his lifetime.
Yeah.
And all we want to talk about this week is why didn't he come out against the Cleveland Browns in the post-game show on Sunday? What the hell does it matter if he says
WWF stuff? Yeah. Not necessary. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the culture we are. So, bottom line, kudos to Huntington and Hurdle. I nothing to be ashamed of.
It was time for a change. It was
time for change. And, Clint Hurdle's a good guy. I mean, I don't know, having talked to him a few times for some work that I did with the Pirates, just an absolutely good guy, does a lot of stuff in the community. He announced that he's retiring, and he's had a great career both as a player, as a coach, as a manager, and, I wish him nothing but the best. He did a great thing here in Pittsburgh. I mean, you look at that culture that he walked into. We keep talking about culture and all those losing seasons. And the fact that he was able to, turn this thing around, the two of them working together, I think we need to celebrate that. And, we're all in agreement that there was the need for a change. And I think we're also all in agreement that we like the moves that were just made.
Right. And
I mean, he had a long tenure there for current Major League Baseball. I mean, that's a long tenure in one place, and particularly a team that, quite frankly, has got to fight and scrap to compete. So, I mean, that's a credit to the guy.
Absolutely. But I say kudos to the Pirates for making some moves that hopefully will turn into the Craig Patrick, Bob Johnson, Scotty Bowman hiring Best by the Penguins in the late 80s.
Yep.
To me, that turned around the Penguin franchise, which was among the worst to play for 20 years.
Yeah.
They were the Pirates before the Pirates.
Exactly. They made that move to strengthen the front office that turned it all around. But before we go, Fletch, I'm going to ask you one thing. Name me 3 Culture Club songs.
Church of the Poison Mind. Do you really want to hurt me?
You want to hurt me, yeah.
Oof.
We need the moo-moo we used to wear.
I'm done, man.
Go get the moo-moo.
I don't have any, but
hurt me. You hurt me.
I can't come up with a third. Do you want to hurt me is the one I always think about.
Yeah,
I love that. He used to wear that moo-moo all the time. That big, not a babushka, but that big kind of dress.
Yeah. When we come back for our second episode, we will talk more baseball.
Gentlemen.
Good evening.
All right, gentlemen.